Hello and welcome back to the channel. For this week's video, I want to delve into another new TTRPG that I've been getting into, and that is Dark Heresy. Dark Heresy is a system set in the universe of Warhammer 40,000, which, for those who don't know, is a very far future sci-fi setting that takes a very satirically negative view of the universe. It is in fact the place where the term grimdark originated from, and it has all the trappings of a setting that you might expect from that. Now, 40k has quite a bit of lore. You could easily spend months going through it all. But the relevant part for Dark Heresy is that you are playing as an inquisitorial retinue, a group of humans banded together under an inquisitor to help root out heresy, chaos, and xenos from within imperial space and to protect the empire from such threats. So, starting with the core rules of the system, Dark Heresy is a D100 system, which means that for all of its tests and resolution mechanics, it uses a 100-sided die. In Dark Heresy, every single one of these tests will be made against a specific characteristic, of which there are 10 in the game. Weapon skill, measuring your prowess with melee combat. Ballistic skill, measuring your prowess with ranged combat. Strength, measuring your physical ability. Toughness, representing health and stamina. Agility, representing dexterity and reflex. Intelligence, representing your ability to think and reason. Perception, representing your awareness of the world around you. Willpower, representing your mental abilities. Fellowship, representing your social abilities. And finally, influence, representing your reputation and how easily you can acquire things. For each characteristic will have a value associated with it. For player characters, this will generally range between 20 and 60 or 70-ish. And this represents how good you are at that thing. Obviously, higher numbers are always better in this case. Additionally, each characteristic has associated with it a characteristic bonus, which is just the 10th digit of the characteristic value. For example, if your willpower were 45, your willpower bonus would be 4. And these are used to determine various things across the system. For example, when making a melee attack, you add your strength bonus as part of the damage to that attack. When rolling a check, you take the characteristic the check is facing against, add any bonuses or penalties that may affect the roll, and then roll your D100 and compare the result, and if you roll less than or equal to your characteristic target value, then you succeed on the check. For example, if you have a weapon skill of 40 and you're trying to attack somebody in melee, you'd roll your D100, and if you rolled 40 or lower, you would succeed. If you were trying to attack someone who is putting some effort into evading, then you might impose a minus 20 to your check, in which case you would only succeed on a 20 or lower. Dark Heresy also includes degrees of success and failure. Whenever you succeed at a check, you always get 1 degree of success, and you gain an additional 1 for every value your 10th digit of your roll is below the 10th digit of your target value. For example, let's say you were targeting a value of 40 and you rolled 35. That is a successful test, and you get 1 degree of success automatically, and because the 10th digit of your roll 3 is 1 less than the 10th digit of your target 4, you get an additional degree of success, meaning that you get a total of 2 degrees of success. The same is true in the inverse for degrees of failure. Let's say your target was 40 and you rolled 65. You would get 1 degree of failure simply for failing the test, plus 2 more because the tens digit of your roll, 65, is 2 higher than the tens digit of your target value, 40. And the last thing to note for basic checks is that Dark Heresy does include a list of skills which can affect certain rolls. You have a list here including things like acrobatics, athletics, different types of lore, dodging attacks, Medicaid, which is like first aid, and so on and so forth. Whenever you attempt one of these checks, these are always going to be based on a specific characteristic. For example, dodge is based on agility. However, if you are untrained in this skill, then you receive a minus 20 penalty to your check. And as you receive higher and higher training in your skill, you'll get more and more bonuses to that specific check in addition to your characteristic value. Moving on from the core mechanics, Dark Heresy as a system is built for you to play an inquisitorial retinue, rooting out the enemies of the Imperium and destroying their dastardly plans so that they may not come to fruition. To help with that, Dark Heresy introduces 2 statistics to help influence out-of-combat social play, influence and subtlety. Influence is a characteristic unique to each player character, meaning multiple characters in a retinue may have different levels of influence, and it represents your ability to acquire things. Unlike in something like BF2, where you receive gold and then can go to the shop to buy whatever you like, in Dark Heresy, you have to requisition items, meaning you have to go find somebody who has the thing you want and ask them for that thing. And influence represents how easily you can get those things that you want. To requisition an item, you need to roll against your influence modified by the availability of an item. A common item, something that can be found quite easily, would grant a plus 10 to your roll, whereas an extremely rare item would grant minus 40. And everything in Dark Heresy needs to be requisitioned, from weapons to armor to grenades to cybernetics, even to individual clips of ammo. Everything needs to be requisitioned for you to be able to use it, meaning that it is important for you to keep your influence as high as you can. The other social mechanic represented is subtlety, which is a single value shared across the entire inquisitorial retinue and tracked by the GM. Subtlety represents fittingly how subtle the retinue is being, and unlike a lot of other characteristics, it is not strictly better to have a higher subtlety. Having a higher subtlety does mean that you can sneak into areas easier and infiltrate cultist activities, but it also makes it harder to get recognition for when you need a High Lord of the planet to act. On the other hand, a very low subtlety allows the retinue to throw their weight around much easier, but also broadcasts to anyone that they might be hunting who they are and where they are. Next up, we have combat, which works much like you might expect it to. At the start of combat, every participant will roll initiative, which is a d10 plus their agility bonus to determine in which order each character goes. And on each character's turn, they have 2 half actions, which can be combined into 1 full action, and a reaction, which can only be used outside of their turn. For example, walking a short distance or making a standard attack is a half action, whereas breaking into a full sprint or taking a careful cold shot against an opponent are full actions. Note that you can only take 1 attack or concentration action each turn. So even though you can attack as a half action, you can't do that twice in a row. You'd have to make 1 attack this round and then wait till your next round to make another attack. Now, notably, attacks are rolled against your characteristic, which means if you have a very high ballistic skill, whenever you take a shot, you're very likely to land that shot. To defend yourselves instead of something like AC, Dark Heresy provides two main forms of defense, that being dodging and parrying, and armor. Each character has access to the evasion reaction, which is either a dodge or parry test, depending on if you're attempting to leap out of the way or parry your opponent with your blade. Know that these are skill checks, so if you aren't trained in these skills, you'll be taking that -20. But if you do succeed the check, you get to fully negate the effects of the attack. The primary method of defense, however, in Dark Heresy is armor. Each armor provides an amount of AP and defines which location on your body it covers. The body has 4 locations: arms, body, legs, and head, and each one may be hit by an attack. While the body is certainly the most common hit location on an opponent, and depending on the results of the roll, a character may hit any area of the body. Upon doing so, you compare the AP of whatever arm you're wearing on that location and add your toughness bonus onto it. For example, if you're wearing Imperial robes, you have 1 AP on your arms, your body, and your legs, meaning that whenever you get hit by an attack in one of those 3 locations, you always reduce the damage by 1. And you'll reduce the damage by an additional amount based on your toughness bonus. So let's say you had a toughness bonus of 3, and you got hit in the body with a 7 damage attack. You take the 7, subtract 3 for your toughness bonus, and 1 from your Imperial robes, leaving you to take 3 damage after the fact. If you instead got hit in the head, you would still subtract 3 for your toughness bonus, but since your robes don't cover your head, you wouldn't get AP in that location, leaving you to take 4 damage instead. Upon taking damage, you first subtract from your wounds, which is a pool of health that you can lose without too much issue. Once you run out of wounds, instead of dying immediately, you start taking critical damage based on the damage type and the body location you were hit. For example, if you took energy critical damage to your body, for example, being shot by a lasgun, you would first lose a half action on your next turn. And as you take more and more critical damage, these effects will stack up and accumulate until you reach the inevitable instant death, which for this tracker is at 9 critical damage. Healing in Dark Heresy is also very slow. You generally, just by sitting around and resting, you only receive 1 wound back per day. You can ask a trained surgeon to heal you, but even that might only get you 6 to 8 additional wounds, and you can only receive first aid once a day. This, combined with the low health pools of characters and the generally high damage of weapons, means that Dark Heresy can often be an extremely lethal game. In order to combat this lethality, Dark Heresy introduces fate points, which is a pool of points which each character will generally have 2 to 4 of, and that refresh each session. Fate can be spent whenever you so desire, and give a variety of bonuses, allowing you to reroll a test, gain bonuses to a test, automatically roll a 10 for initiative, remove some small amount of critical damage from your character, and so on and so forth. And using these wisely and judiciously can be the difference between surviving a terrible encounter or dying in that same encounter. And the final thing I want to cover is advancing in Dark Heresy. While acquiring more gear is done solely through requisitioning and increasing your influence so that you can requisition rarer and generally more powerful equipment, advancing your character is done by spending EXP. EXP can be spent on 3 different things. Skills to learn new skills or improve skills you already know. Characteristics to improve the base statistics of your character. Or talents to buy special abilities and features of your character that help you do different things. The XP cost of these purchases depend on 2 things. First, the level you're trying to purchase. For example, buying a skill at rank 1 known is cheaper than advancing that skill to rank 2, and buying a tier 1 talent is going to be cheaper than buying a tier 3 talent. The second thing which you need to know is what aptitudes your character has and what aptitudes the thing you're trying to purchase requires. Aptitudes are split into a list of generic aptitudes, such as leadership, fieldcraft, or the general aptitude which everyone will always have, and characteristic-based aptitudes for the 9 different characteristics, barring influence, since you cannot raise influence with EXP. Each skill, characteristic, and talent will list 2 aptitudes that they are compatible with. For example, strength has obviously the strength aptitude and also the offense aptitude, whereas intelligence has aptitudes of intelligence and knowledge. And if you share the aptitudes that the characteristic, skill, or talent you're attempting to acquire requires, then the purchase in terms of XP value will be cheaper. For example, buying a simple characteristic advance, which grants you +5 to your characteristic, is only 100 XP if you have both of the required aptitudes, but 500 XP if you don't share any aptitudes with that characteristic at all. So that's all for the brief overview of Dark Heresy. Obviously, this is a very, very light introduction, and there's a lot more depth in the system that I haven't covered. If you're interested in more, then always go out and read the Dark Heresy book for yourself, or you can stick around as I will be covering more aspects of the Dark Heresy system, as it's a system that I find extremely intriguing and has held my attention for quite a bit. So if you're interested, I hope you'll come back next time as I have more Dark Heresy coverage coming up. But most importantly, I hope you have a lovely day.